On a freezing night, a wounded German shepherd appeared at the doorstep of a lonely retired cop. In her mouth, she carried a dying puppy, and in her eyes, a desperate plea for help. What happened next revealed a truth so powerful, it left everyone who heard it in tears. The small wooden house at the edge of town stood dark except for the soft glow of a single lamp in the living room. Inside, an old man sat alone, staring at the fire that crackled weakly in the hearth. He was once a cop, a protector of people, a man who had faced danger without hesitation. But those days were behind him. Now, the silence of retirement pressed heavy on his shoulders. The photos on the wall reminded him of a past filled with duty and loss. Nights like this only deepened his loneliness. The ticking of a clock echoed through the house. He poured himself another cup of coffee, the steam rising into the cold air. His joints ached, his heart even more so. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying the sound of a world that had long forgotten him. For him, it was just another night, quiet, uneventful, and painfully ordinary. Or so he thought. He had no idea that fate was about to bring a visitor to his doorstep, one that would change the course of his life forever. The old cop shifted in his chair, reaching for the remote, when a faint scratching broke the silence. At first, he thought it was just the wind tugging at loose branches outside. But then came a low whine, followed by another desperate scrape against the porch door. His brow furrowed as he rose slowly, his knees protesting, and moved toward the sound. The cold rushed in as he pulled the door open. What he saw froze him in place. Standing in the swirling snow was a German shepherd, her fur clumped with ice and streaked with blood. In her mouth, she carried a tiny, motionless puppy. The mother dog's eyes locked onto his, filled with exhaustion and pleading. She staggered forward, placed the pup gently at his boots, then let out a whimper so broken it cut through him deeper than any siren ever had. For a long moment, man and dog stood in silence, the storm raging around them. He realized this wasn't just an animal at his door. This was a mother, desperate, begging him to help save her child. The old cop dropped to one knee, his breath catching in the frigid air. The puppy lay still in the snow, its tiny chest barely rising, fur stiff with frost. With trembling hands, he reached down, afraid that he was already too late. But then, a faint twitch, a shallow breath. Hope flickered. The mother dog whined, nudging the pup with her nose before turning her gaze back to him. Her eyes glistened with desperation, but also with trust. She pawed at his arm, nudged his sleeve, almost as if she were begging him not to give up. Each gesture screamed louder than words ever could. Please, save my baby. The old man felt something stir deep inside, something he thought he had buried years ago. He carefully scooped up the frail puppy, holding it close to his chest. The mother wagged her tail weakly, then pressed against his side, her body trembling from both cold and wounds that in that moment, he understood. She hadn't chosen his house at random. Somehow she knew. She had come to him because she believed he could help. And though his heart was weary, he couldn't turn away. Not tonight. The old man carried the limp puppy inside, the mother following closely, her steps heavy and unsteady. He laid the tiny body on a blanket near the fire, his hands hovering as memories flooded back. Memories of the many times he had arrived too late in his career. Faces he couldn't save. Lives that had slipped through his fingers. His chest tightened. He had sworn to himself he was done with saving lives. Retirement was supposed to mean rest, detachment, escape from the weight of responsibility. Yet here, in the glow of the fire, a helpless pup fought for breath, and a mother's desperate eyes burned into him, demanding action. For a moment, doubt gnawed at him. What if he failed again? What if this fragile life slipped away despite his efforts? But as he looked at the trembling mother pressed against her pup, he realized he didn't have the luxury of hesitation. This wasn't about failure or redemption. This was about doing the right thing. The old cop's hands steadied as instinct took over. He grabbed a towel from the cabinet, wrapping the frail puppy and rubbing gently to stir warmth into its frozen body. The firelight flickered across his face, revealing both focus and fear. Each shallow breath the pup took was a fragile battle against the cold. Beside him, the mother dog paced nervously, whining each time her pup whimpered. She pressed close, licking the tiny face as though willing life back into her child. The man worked quickly, placing a bowl of warm water nearby, dipping his fingers and moistening the pup's mouth. Slowly, carefully, he pressed its chest, urging its lungs to respond. Minutes felt like hours. The silence of the room was broken only by the crackle of fire and the soft sounds of the struggling puppy. Sweat formed on his brow despite the cold. Then, suddenly, a stronger cough, a louder cry. The pup stirred, legs twitching weakly. Relief crashed over him. He exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The mother let out a soft howl of joy, nuzzling her baby with renewed hope. For the first time that night, survival seemed possible as the puppy whimpered softly in his hands. The old cop felt a sharp ache in his chest. The sight of fragile life clinging to survival ripped open memories he had spent years burying. He saw flashes of his past, the sirens, the cries, the faces of those he couldn't save. One memory returned clearer than the rest. A child, no older than this puppy, slipping away in his arms years ago. He had done everything right, but it hadn't been enough. That night had haunted him, convincing him that his time as a protector was over. Since then, he had lived in silence, punishing himself with loneliness. But now, as he looked at the tiny pup and the pleading mother by his side, something shifted. For the first time in years, he felt a purpose burning inside him. Maybe he couldn't change the past, but he could fight for this moment. He placed the pup gently back against its mother, watching her curl protectively around it. In their eyes, he saw gratitude, and in his heart, he felt redemption beginning to take root. The blanket near the fire glowed with warmth as the puppy shifted, its tiny chest rising with steadier breaths. A faint whimper escaped its mouth, stronger than before. The old cop leaned closer, his eyes widening. Against all odds, the little one was fighting back. The mother dog wagged her tail weakly, licking her pup with tender urgency. She nosed it closer to her body, curling around both warmth and safety. Her eyes shone with gratitude, glancing up at the man as if to say she knew. He had given her baby a second chance. For the old cop, the sight stirred something he thought he had lost forever. The heaviness that had haunted his heart seemed to lift, replaced by a flicker of hope. He realized he wasn't just saving a life. He was rediscovering his own. The room fell into a fragile peace. Fire crackled, the pup whimpered, and for the first time in years, he felt whole again. By morning, the storm had passed, and the world outside lay silent beneath a blanket of white. Inside, the fire still glowed warmly. The puppy now nestled safely against its mother, breathing steadily, tiny paws twitching as if dreaming. The old cop watched in silence, tears glistening in his tired eyes. The mother dog rose weakly and padded toward him. She pressed her head gently against his knee, a simple act that spoke louder than words. He stroked her fur, his voice breaking as he whispered, "You didn't just bring me your puppy. You brought me back to life." For the first time in years, he felt needed again, and it made him cry.